Welcome to episode 70 of the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm Rika, Whelan, your host, and I am, as always, very excited to be here to share with you something special. And so in this episode, I will be introducing you to a brand new series called Conversations About Gossip. I nearly said it the other way around. And this series, episodes will air once every 4 weeks. I will bring a conversation to you that I had with someone, that could be a leader, it could be an employee, about gossip and about their experience with gossip. And although I drafted questions prior to every single interview, those questions are not stuck to because it's just interesting conversations with people about a topic that I feel extremely passionate about. I feel that God's put gossip on my heart as something that needs to be eradicated, something that needs to be done about it. And the Bible is, God is very vocal in the Bible about how he feels about gossip. So I look forward to sharing these conversations with you. And in today's very first conversation, I bring to you Brandon Gano. Now, Brandon was in a leadership role where he himself struggled to manage the gossipers. And listen in as I ask him, but why did you not do anything about it? What was your reasoning behind that? And I think that that's a lot of leadership today, is we see that other people are gossiping, but we don't really want to do anything about it. And that's because we've got internal afflictions to that gossip. We don't want to, there's so many reasons why people and leaders don't deal with gossip. And I know you've got yours as well. So feel free to come and join the Facebook group, come and share there on the Woman of Faith in Leadership Facebook community. And we're a small community at the moment, which means that we can get lots of good conversations in. And I just wanted to do a disclaimer. So I'm going to do a disclaimer in the head of every single guest episode that I have, especially on this series, because I feel like it needs to be said that I'm allowing people to have their personal opinions, and I'm allowing you to listen to these personal opinions. And so I just want to make clear that, yes, we all have our different opinions about gossip, what it's about, and, different people feel different ways about gossip as well. I need to make that quite clear. But what I know and what I declare is that God says that gossip is wrong. And he says that a person who gossips is like they've got a fire or a sword as a tongue, because they're cutting and hurting other people. And so my opinion remains that of, and what I have read in the Bible, but I'm allowing other people to bring me their opinions, and let's talk about gossip. And one thing that I can safely say is that no one at least says that gossip is a good thing. Well, no one that I've spoken to yet. But I'm just sorry for this, extended introduction. But I think it's just so interesting that, people have different opinions. And I hope that you also value and listen to these different opinions as I bring them to you on this series. So let's jump into the first guest episode of this series, Conversations About Gossip. And then I look forward to chatting with you again on the other side. Leading as a woman is tough, but leading as a woman of faith is next level. However, it doesn't have to be that way. God has called you into this leadership role because he says you are worthy. You are his child, and if he qualifies you, who in this world can unqualify you? You might suffer from imposter syndrome and believe you're not good enough, but God says you are good enough. Hi, I'm Rika, Whelan, Christian leader and workplace culture coach, and together we're going to navigate leadership with faith as our foundation. Let's get started. Grab your coffee or water, keep that notebook and pen handy, and let's jumpstart your leadership. Welcome, Brandon, to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here. Now, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience with workplace gossip?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I honestly thought we were going to just gossip about our coworkers. So did I maybe hear that wrong? Am I on the wrong show?
Love
Um,
that.
no, but no, this is such a crucial topic. I owned a business for the last 5 years that I ended up selling last year. Now I'm starting a new business with a business partner where we consult other small businesses, and this is like the one topic that will just destroy a business from the inside out. So I've seen it from both my business where it was handled poorly, and then I was the same leader, so yeah, I made the mistakes too, and now I see it in my client's business, and it's one of those things that if you don't get a handle on it, it's just a disaster. So it's a big passion topic of mine, and I love talking through it and hearing what other people do about it too, because I don't think there's any one right solution, one size fits all. So let's see. Hopefully, I can add some value to your listeners, and we can get past the gossip.
Mm. I really love that. And I think it is such a crucial point that you mentioned as well, that leaders do need to take it seriously. They do need to realize that if they don't take it seriously, that it will actually damage their business. So on that topic of damaging the business, I really loved what you said there. So in what ways have you seen can gossip be really detrimental to an organization or to a business or then to a team for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, the different ways are really limitless. Some of the things that I've seen in my own experience are, I had these two employees who, they were like best buds, and they would just gossip about anything and everything under the sun about what people would wear, what they would do, and it got to the point where, in like high school or like high school movies, like the cool girls and the cliques and all this stuff, that's what it felt like. Where like people were afraid to go up to these two just because of what they knew they would be saying on the backside of that conversation. So it was it was such a disaster that they really became isolated. Nobody wanted to work with them. Nobody wanted to talk with them, and they didn't want to talk with anybody else because they felt like now those people were judging them, not realizing that that's the exact thing that they were doing to the rest of the organization. And I've seen that's probably one of the worst situations I've seen. In some of our clients though, the same thing is happening, and these are all adults, by the way. They're not like 15-year-old high school students. These are full grown adults. But some of the things that are coming up now in one of our clients is we have two people that they just don't want to talk to each other, so they talk to everybody else in the business about that other person. And what that does for me is really more than anything else, it tells me everything I need to know about the person who is doing the gossiping, who's starting that message. Because now I know, so Rika, let's use you as an example. If I say something to you and then I hear something about my life through somebody else, I know that whatever I say to you is now at risk of being broadcast to the whole world. No matter
Mm.
how true or false that is, that's the sense that I get. So what am I immediately going to do? I'm going to pull back from you. And that does not foster team chemistry or communication because I don't think I can have an open line of communication with you. I don't think I can be honest, and I definitely don't want to be friends with you. So I'm going to do everything I can to avoid you. And that's the situation that happens, one or two times you give somebody grace, maybe it's a slip of the tongue here and there, but when it becomes a pattern and the same people are spreading the news, if you will, throughout the entire company, it just you start to destroy cultures and isolate those people, and if they're not taken care of by the leadership, most importantly, it's just gonna bring the culture down with them.
Mm. And what I was wondering when you had mentioned that, because there's so many good points that we can discuss there or unpack there. And the first thing I wanted to have a look at is what processes are or are not in place. Because, I'm thinking about those two people that just gossip about everyone and they now isolated because of their behavior. And obviously, there's no trust there. But was there no procedures in place or like anything, and what did leaders do about it? Because that's always my question, is why is nobody speaking up or out about these two people?
At the time, no, there was nothing in place. It was just kind of this thing that festered, and there was no real way to have it take care of itself, so to speak. So that's where, and shame on leadership. Hi, my name's leadership, by the way. So shame on me for not stepping in sooner. But really, what I had to do at that point was, I sat both of them down. both separately, individually, and then I started to have conversations with them and the people that were most offended by them. And what the most impactful piece of that was the sitting down individually, because I really had to just understand, you know, where are you coming from that you have to talk about somebody else in a negative light? Like you're putting somebody else down. Is it to make you feel better? Is it to cover up one of your insecurities? And obviously, I mean, these meetings were private. I didn't want this to be blasted out publicly to the company. But what came of it was, there was some level of fear about how they were being perceived by other people, whether they were capable of doing their job at a high level, what other people thought of them, all this other stuff, and they were taking it out on other people. So when we kind of addressed that and said, okay, first things first, like, you're making everybody else uncomfortable. If this continues, you won't have a job here. I don't like to lead with that and say, like, I'm gonna fire you and just be like the tyrannical boss. Um, but that was a very serious thing. You're destroying the company culture. Nobody trusts you. Nobody wants to be around you. So I'm either gonna have to go down that route, or how can we fix this? Is there a way we can kind of get over whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking? Can you and this other person at least try to not talk about other people? Is that a fair solution? They both said yes. And obviously, after uncovering what was really behind it, we could move forward. And then it's a process, though. I mean, we had to slowly build back trust. It's not like, oh, yep, so and so said they're not going to talk about you ever again. You're good. You can go spill your whole life details to them. It was months and months of continually proving and rebuilding that trust. And it for me, it was a conversation internally of saying, is this person valuable to the organization? Are they valuable to the team aside from this little hiccup, if you will? Or is it best to just move on? Because you do have to analyze, if it's going to take that long to rebuild trust, they better be worth it and they better be committed to the team. And in this scenario, both of these people happen to be. But I've also been part of scenarios where they weren't. And they just, we just had to let that person go. And I never want to go down that path, but it's really a reflection more of the individual, that they're doing this, that they're gossiping about other people. And it says a lot about you as a leader if you continue to allow that. So it's best for the whole team and that individual if you just let them go.
Mm. Well, I just want to thank you for your vulnerability, because I think it's really important as leaders that we do get vulnerable and we realize that, number one, we have made the mistake of either not addressing that soon enough, and then and then in that space it's never too late. You can still jump in and address that, exactly what you did. So that was amazing. I really like that you said that. And then I think the other thing is, as leaders, if we keep on tolerating it, we should also consider, are we maybe part of the problem? Do we tolerate it because we also like that feedback from people constantly? Because as leaders, we can encourage gossip because we want people to constantly come and tell us what's going on. And so, yeah, I really like that. And then can I ask you, I wrote it down here because I was wondering, what was the reason why you didn't tackle it sooner? Was there some limiting beliefs, or did you have a fear of like how they were going to react? Or yeah, just let's dig a little bit deeper into that.
That's a good question. And it's I don't know that I've thought about that answer. I'd love to unpack it with you right now.
Mhm.
um yeah, I would say there was probably a fear of how the conversation would go,
Mm,
because I mean, you and I both have probably met dozens of people, if not hundreds, over the course of our lives who are gossipers, like by nature. This is just what they do. Um, and those people tend to be reluctant to change. So I was kind of worried. I mean, these were two key employees. So having this conversation, A, is a difficult conversation. It's going to disrupt the status quo. Not that the status quo is always good. It should probably be disrupted from time to time. But this would impact it in a potentially very negative way. And I would be down two very key employees out of four key employees. I would have lost half of my leadership team, if this went south. So it was one of those things like, I wonder if I can maybe push this off another day. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow obviously never came. And then when I started to see what it was doing to the rest of the team underneath them, emotionally, and the stress that they would come to work with just because they didn't want to be in this environment. I was like, okay, no more. We can't prolong this anymore. We have to have this conversation. And it's one of those things that you probably build up and make way worse in your own head than it actually is. But it's definitely a conversation you have to be prepared for. I mean, you can't just go in and get angry and get emotional at people. The reaction is you're talking about how someone shows up as a human being. Like by definition, they're gonna be triggered by that because you've attacked their identity to some regard. So you have to be as kind, as gentle as possible, and also say it's not about you in this situation. Like it's really about the people who you're hurting. And that to me as the leader was the most important. If you continue to do this outside of the walls of this workplace, I can't really stop that. I can't help you with that, but I have to stand up for my team and also just know I would do the same for you. If something ever happened to you, like that's the level of respect that we're attacking this with is you're hurting somebody else and you're making them uncomfortable at work. We
Mm,
can't have that.
mm,
But yeah, the fear of I guess the downsides or the risks of having that conversation is definitely what made me put it off.
mm. I think one of the most valuable things you mentioned is the fact that they were actually good performers. Like they did really well in their jobs. And so you're not actually the first leader to mention that, well, they're doing really good at their job. So I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to, you know, change the dynamic of how things are going at the moment because those people are doing really well and they're meeting their key performance indicators. And I think that's very crucial. What you did, the way you handled it, is you came from a human perspective, not from, this is not about your performance. It's not about you, but it's actually about the behavior and it's about the people who are affected by that behavior. And I think that is a crucial thing for any listener of any leader who's dealing with gossip, is just to think, okay, don't worry about how those people are going to react. But if you prepare well, then their reactions should be well too, and it should be well received. So yeah, awesome. That's really amazing. So, and I'm guessing after that things went much better.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it was a process. It's not a
Mm,
flip of a switch. They have to prove themselves to everybody else in the
mm,
company. They have to prove themselves to me that they actually were receptive to this and they were willing to make that change. And then I think to some degree they had to prove themselves to themselves. I mean, when you're going to make a shift in the way you operate as a human being, you have to you have to have those little micro wins that add up. So when you put that thought in your head, like, you know, gossiping is bad. Let's just use that as the foundation here. If you even have a little bit of a thought of judging somebody else, if you're in line at a coffee shop, you're like, look at the shoes she's wearing. Like you have to battle that inner dialogue because that is a vibration of your vocal cords of now being gossip in the workplace. You could have easily said that to somebody else. You're judging someone, you're gossiping about them, and now we're right back at square one. So I think that was probably the biggest piece. And you saw how I was able to see how both of them were uncomfortable with it, with the change in themselves. And I think changing yourself as a human being, whether you're a leader, employee, it's human nature to not change, right? We get in our own patterns out of security, but when you look at the cost and you say, if I don't change, where will I end up? If I do change, where could I end up? And that's what I had to kind of do as the leader was paint that picture, and I've made it very clear, without a job or still part of this team. So if you want your job here, then I suggest you do change. If you want to leave and go elsewhere and continue this behavior, by all means be my guest, but it's just not something that we can tolerate here.
mm, mm. Yeah, I think it's sometimes you just have to move people on, and I've had to do that as well in one organization in particular where I worked. I just had to move some people on because they refused to change, they refused to stop gossiping, and their perception, it was more about that as well, their perception about what gossip really is. They didn't want to change that because it is hard. It's human nature. You said it just right there. It's very hard for us as human beings to change, especially if we've been a certain way or we've done a certain thing, especially as a habit, then we have to change that. So, yeah, that's very valuable. Thanks for that. The next question that I have for you is, let's talk a little bit about the frustration that gossip causes in the workplace. So, as a leader, talk a little bit about the frustration it caused for you, but then also the frustration of having to deal with that. So, if you just think about yourself there, and then we'll talk about how did you deal with that afterwards.
It's a disaster. What it really would come down to is no matter who was either starting the gossip or the recipient of it or hearing that they were gossiped about, it would always end up on my plate. Like, did you hear what so and so did? Or this person's saying things about me that's whatever. I can't even. I don't want to put myself back in that conversation because they're so stupid. But it would always come to me, and I'm like, do you see me trying to get something done? Like, you came in to tell me this now? Was that important? Like, I don't care what they're wearing to work. Please go have this conversation with somebody else. So it's just a distraction.
Mm,
At the root of every single conversation was it is a distraction.
mm,
No matter what, whether the gossip about is about something that happened in the office, in your personal life, or whatever, it never needs to be vocalized. That's just my opinion of it. Actually, you said something interesting. It would what was it? The people challenged the way they perceive the gossip, or
mm,
the
mm,
perception of what was actually gossip. Go read the Bible if you want to really shift your perception of what gossip is. Just
mm.
keep your mouth shut. That's the moral of the story.
Yep.
If it's not speaking life into somebody or a situation, it doesn't have a place. So that's really the mindset I would take on is, and then I have adopted since is, if this is not going to add value to a situation or speak life or positivity into another human being, just
Mm,
not worth it. And then the next step is, like I said before, getting them out of your head. Like the fact
mm,
that those thoughts are coming up, you need to remove them from your daily life, and it's a journey. Like, I'm not just gonna come here and preach like, "Nope, get rid of all your bad thoughts about other people, that has no place." Like, okay, I'm not crazy, but
mm,
what I'm saying is recognize them, take them captive, and then get them out of your head, because
mm,
that's the kind of stuff that starts to eat away at relationships, really. So it's both a nuisance on my time, and then it eats away at my relationship, whether I vocalize it or not. I've had that thought about somebody else, and now I could perceive them in a certain way that's not true. So
mm,
that's where it's just kind of keeping that stuff contained is super important.
mm. I so agree with you on the perception, like the perception of other people, because very recently, and I'll share this again, like from a personal perspective, because I'm also very honest on the podcast about my own journey with gossip, because I was a gossiper. But very recently, I would say within the last 3 weeks, someone shared something with me, and I didn't tell them not to share it, so I didn't immediately realize that they shouldn't be doing that. I don't know why. I think it was because it was a close friend, and I allowed her to vent. And so she told me something about someone else. And I realized that after she told me that, my perception of that other person changed. And so I now have to battle that constant perception about that other person because of what someone else told me. I wasn't involved in that situation. It had nothing to do with me, but now my perception of that other person has changed. So I'm battling now inwardly because I'm like, no, you can't think differently about this person because you were not there. You don't know for a fact what happened. You don't know that person's emotions, and that other person could have perceived it incorrectly. So that is the triangle, or that issue of gossip, is that your perception of someone else changes if you allow people to gossip to you.
Yeah, and then you're always fighting that uphill battle of saying like,
Mm,
okay, first of all, if you didn't want to believe that about that person, now you're just looking for ways to prove that piece of information wrong, which is
mm,
again a distraction from the relationship, the conversation you're in, whatever. It always comes back to the distraction. And the other piece is like, you also don't know, even if it's me and you in a conversation, you're all the way across the world. You have had a whole different life than I have had. We're in different cultures. I don't know that if I were in your shoes and had your exact life, what if I would do the same exact thing? So maybe it rubbed me the wrong way, but I don't have a full understanding of your life. So that's the part of just like giving people grace and saying, maybe I could ask a few more questions and to really understand your perspective or why something happened, whatever, if it's a one-on-one situation. But especially if you're hearing it from a third party, you don't know if that person would do the same thing in their shoes and if you would do the same thing in their shoes too. So it's just this completely destructive uh, way of life, if you will.
Mm. And I can completely agree with what you mentioned about what you just talked about, different cultures, different people, different backgrounds, because when it comes to that piece of conflict or the way people do things, people grow up differently. Their backgrounds are completely different. The way their parents taught them are completely different. And that could be from for religious reasons, from cultural reasons, from anything. So what you mentioned is actually extremely valuable because in Australia, for example, so I can't speak for where you are, but in Australia, nearly every second person you speak to is an immigrant, including me. I'm from South Africa, but 10 years now living in Australia. And so the way that we had this conversation just pre-recording actually about the way Australians do things, and for me it can be a little bit odd the way they do things, but that's their culture, that's just the way that they grew up. To them, that's the norm. And so for me to kind of get upset about it or to frown upon it, it does encourage that gossip piece as well, because that's just their culture, that's the way that they do things. It might be odd to me, and especially in the workplace, sometimes in the workplace we are more judgmental of what other people do. And so I think that's where expectations of the way we do things at work should be very clear, so that there's a standard operating procedure of how we do things here, and basically your culture or any other background really doesn't play a role. So what's your take on that?
I am a real sucker for standard operating procedures. I mean, that's you're speaking my language now. That's what we do. But yeah, it's about well, it comes from when we unpack this, it's building a culture that is anti-gossip or really anti-bringing people down. And so in our business architecture or business operating system that we've created at our company, um, there's two pieces that come into play. Leadership, we have renamed to inspire. The whole acronym spells out the word harmonious because we want to run a harmonious business. So the I is for inspire. The H in harmonious is actually another acronym. It replaces HR. So we typically think about people as human resources. That's disgusting. Why do we talk about people like that? So we've renamed it home. Humans optimized in a meaningful environment. So here's how we unpack that. We're talking about humans. And we want to optimize those humans. What does gossip do? Never ever would that optimize any human being doing the gossiping or on the receiving end of it. The other part is the meaningful environment. If you are going to create a meaningful environment, it needs to be positive, collaborative. Not that we can't disagree with people, but it needs to be a spirit of challenge and growth and these good things that will help an organization and a human being grow and thrive. And then back on the leadership side, it's not about just leading people, it's truly about inspiring them. A good leader, we believe, inspires a team to be better and reach higher levels of growth than they would otherwise, just left to their own devices. So when you put those two pieces together, you are as a leader, it's your job to inspire your culture, your team, your people to be better as human beings and to create a more powerful and meaningful environment. And when you do those two things really well, everything else kind of fades away. Because I mean, you can have as many SOPs as you want about how to talk to somebody, but if those foundational pieces are not there, it doesn't matter. It's going to erode itself anyway because human nature will become human nature. So we need to have that culture in place, and it's very, very hard. But with intentionality, you can get there.
Mm. And the importance of leadership can absolutely not be understated or underestimated, because leaders lead and they have to inspire and influence their team, because John Maxwell actually says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I've seen that firsthand as well. Leaders have got the opportunity to influence their team in terms of culture, in terms of the way that they treat each other. And when you were speaking to those people, you led with kindness, and you led from that human nature perspective. Like, we understand that it's human nature to gossip, but what decisions can we make? What's that daily battles that we need to fight to ensure that our actions don't hurt other people? So I really, really liked what you just said, and I like that harmonious acronym. That's awesome. So is that part of your current business?
Yes. Yeah, that's my it's the brainchild of my business partner. He's been consulting the Fortune 100 for 2.5 decades, and he's distilled what it is to be a harmonious business from kind of seeing how big business is broken and really all
Mm.
business is broken. So we've distilled that into an architecture and operating system so that small businesses can really leverage that to do less and get more and ultimately win. We just want small businesses to win because it's an unfortunately overlooked segment of the market.
Mm. Okay, so as a final discussion for this interview, because I reckon we can probably carry on for a very long time because we're both very passionate about this topic. So, but what's your final advice that you would give to any leader or any business or any organization when it comes to gossip?
Ask questions, ask better questions. I mean, you can see me here. I know this is an audio podcast, but there's a giant lit up obnoxious question mark behind me on the wall. And that's what we're all about is better powerful questions get powerful answers. And that's really if you're gonna up level your leadership, your culture, your people, you have to figure out what is if you want to be able to, in your words, influence that to be better and lead and inspire. So if you have a problem with gossiping, you got to get to the bottom of it. I mean, you could fire everybody. I don't recommend that option, but if you connect with the human being and understand what is it about this situation or this person that's maybe triggering you or making you act this way, you will uncover what's happening inside of them, and now you're connected at the human level. You can bring them with you and bring them to higher ground because I really don't think we want to gossip as human beings. Like we are built as humans to collaborate, and yeah, there's that tribal mentality for sure, but there should be a human tribe, and I really think that's present. If we can unpack and uncover what that is and build our culture around it, we're all chasing the same mission in our company, at least we should be. So let's get to the bottom of that and then build people back up rather than just tearing them down through gossip. So um, that's it. That's the long-winded answer of saying ask better questions.
Hmm. Great, thank you. And then where can people connect with you?
So if you want, I don't know why, but we have been told on our podcast we have a very Aussie vibe, which is kind of cool. I love that. So you could be the judge. We actually rank very highly in New Zealand. I know it's not the same country. I know.
That's
But
okay.
the podcast is called Harmonious at Lunch. I'd love to check you out there. And if you are curious about growing your business, getting to that next level, and really we specialize in helping leaders get out of the center of their business get that decision making time back and really get the freedom that we started our businesses for. Check us out on our website. We have a 10-minute diagnostic at whatif.com. It'll tell you exactly where your business is in that harmonious architecture and the 10 disciplines of business. And it'll actually paint the roadmap for you of how to get unstuck and get to that next level. So I encourage anybody to check that out. It's free, it takes 10 minutes. What's there to
Hmm.
lose?
Excellent. And I'll make sure that I put those links in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to go and click on it and navigate there. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode and those brutally honest conversation about gossip. And if you've got any questions that you would like to ask, you can come and post them in the Facebook group once you've joined. Otherwise, you can actually go to the womanoffaithinleadership.com website where you have two options. You can either leave a written question or you can leave me a speak pipe. Now, a speak pipe is a voice note that you'll send to me. And if you feel comfortable with that, I will also put your speak pipe on the podcast, especially if you've got a question that I can answer. It's a listener question that I can answer. You'll be featured on my podcast and I'll be answering your listener question. Now, I do have a listener question coming up next week, and I look forward to seeing you then in the next episode where I will be tackling an issue that I feel that many people struggle with, and that is when your integrity comes into question at work. What do you do? What should you say? How should you handle it? Look forward to seeing you then. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. If this podcast blessed you in some way, the number one way you can thank me is by leaving a review. Your feedback means the world to me and lights me up every single time when I read it. And it makes me want to keep going. So please leave a review, and your review will also help other Christian women in leadership find the answers they are looking for. So whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the review section and leave that review. Then head over to womenoffaithinleadership.com and join our free Facebook community, and I look forward to engaging with you there.